Thank you for coming to this training, and I look forward to sharing some information with you. I have a lot of information to cover, so I appreciate your patience. I'm working from home, and that means you can probably hear noises in the other room, or trucks going by, or perhaps my dog. Like many of us working from home right now, we have some challenges. So tech is not my favorite. My IT guy is taking care of most of it, but I'm going to do my best to share this program with you. So the title is Working, Communication, and Time Management. A lot of us are working and trying to communicate and trying to manage our time, and these are kind of difficult times. So I'm hoping some of this information will be new or fresh, or at least give you some other ideas to help you do what you need to do. First tech problem, there you go. I'm your trainer, I'm Dr. Vali Hawkins-Mitchell. I'm the co-owner of your Employee Assistance Program. I have PhDs and master's degrees and lots of experiences, and I'm old, and I'm kind of a weird and groovy artist and poet. And if you want to know more about me, please, give me a call, buy me a cup of coffee, or check my websites, and you can see more information about that. But most of today is about you. And today we're going to talk about what it feels like to be living in paradise, but knowing that right now it's very stressful. A lot of our friends that don't live here consider this the magical place. And we know it is magical, and we protect it and we take care of it. But we also have daily things like school and grocery shopping and cleaning the house and putting gas in the car and driving through traffic. Paradise isn't always easy for us. Sometimes it's very stressful. And with the overlay of COVID-19, some of our stress is getting worse, and we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know what's going to change tomorrow, so it's a different time for all of us. So the topics I'm going to talk to you about today include some understanding of disaster emotional management, kind of a beginning overview of what it's like to deal with a disaster. I have lots of experience of boots on the ground at national and international disasters like Hurricane Katrina and wildfires and the World Trade Center disaster, Samoan tsunamis. And I have a sense of giving you some ideas of things you may not have considered about dealing with a disaster. If this is your first, second, or third disaster, you'll recognize some of these. Communication is important. I'm going to talk a little bit about time management, how to maintain your focus, how to avoid what I call the rabbit hole, extreme self-care, which during a disaster is different than regular self-care, and give you some tools and some resources to help you along. Speaking of working at home, you can hear the sirens going by right now. I live near the Honolulu Zoo, and it's often very busy here. Let's start with life cycles of a disaster. When you're in the middle of a disaster, it's difficult to maintain your perspective from day to day. You're dealing with small things and regular things and difficult things and new things. And sometimes it's difficult to see kind of around the corner of what's going on, what I call the big picture. A lot of times people will call and say, I'm having trouble with this or that, or my kids have been a problem, or work has been a problem, different than usual. And I can say to them, it's very difficult to serve a cup of tea in the middle of a tornado. We're in the middle of a disaster, a global pandemic. Whether it's affecting you directly or not, it's all around you. Disasters have cycles. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you think about an earthquake, the earthquake starts, it shakes, and then it ends, and everything lands maybe in a different place, but it's over. A tornado comes and goes. A hurricane comes and goes. A pandemic will eventually come and go and become history. We talk about the Spanish flu or the bubonic plague. Eventually, this will be in the past. How soon, we don't know. But disasters always have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Beginnings are interesting, middles are hard, and ends never come soon enough. In a disaster, one of the things that pops up is your world seems out of control. And so people try to control their world with various strategies. what really is more effective during a disaster is working on your management skills. You can't control the disaster, but you can manage how you respond to it. You can manage what you do during it. Living in the present, trying to avoid the disasters inside the disasters. I'll talk more about this in a moment. But what makes COVID-19 so different? As I've said, most disasters have a fairly predictable track, a beginning, a middle, and an end. COVID seems to feel so different because there's so many middles and so many beginnings and so many ends. We don't know what's going on from day to day, from hour to hour. How many people are dying? How many people are sick? What's the shutdown today? Are we full lockdown? What does that mean? Are we done? Are we almost done? Are the numbers going up again? Are they going down again? And that is happening locally in our state, as well as nationally, as well as globally. So we may look at our situation, feel like we're in the middle, where someone else is feeling like the end, and other people feel like they're just beginning. It's a hodgepodge. So the question I get asked a lot is, well, what's normal during a pandemic? Well, there's no such thing as normal. Normal is a setting on your dishwasher or your washing machine. There can be not any normal, especially in an abnormal situation. There are normal behaviors in an abnormal situation. There's also abnormal behaviors in an abnormal situation. We'll talk about that more too. But a lot of times what people are dealing with is the motion of their fears and concerns and anxieties moving from moment to moment and changing over time. We like to put, psychologists, people like to put numbers on things, and kind of an easy rubric to deal with is thinking about things in terms of from 0 to 10. It's an artificial mechanism, but it can help you understand people around you and yourself. So if we look at our fears as one example during a disaster, 0 means you're fine, you're at ease. 1, you're slightly nervous, get a little more nervous, more apprehensive, more fearful. As the numbers start going up, you become more and more fearful up to the point of panicking. And during the early parts, you can use basic self-care, you can take care of targeted self-care, you can manage your anxiety, and if it gets to the larger numbers, you want to seek professional help. So the thing that's different about something that doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and end is that you can feel a 1 today and a 7 tomorrow, a 6 on Thursday, and a 5 on Friday, and then back to 1 and then back to 10, depending on how the motion of the disaster is moving closer to you or farther away or in your vicinity. How is it directly affecting you or your loved ones? And some people are impacted differently by a disaster. People who have already had trauma, who are abuse survivors, people with a current history of illness or mental illness, veterans or active military, someone with addiction issues or someone in the family with addiction, or those with recent losses of loved ones or pets or have moved. People will be impacted by disasters differently. And so knowing who you are in that discussion, if you fit one of those categories and you may be having a more difficult time, that might be your normal. That might be your response is different than the person you're working with. One person's 5 can be another person's 10. There's no right way to deal with a disaster, but there are better management tools. But there are psychological stages that people go through during and after disaster. I track this. I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of disasters and been on the ground with them. And, I will say, here we go, initial impact. People are excited, anxious or fearful or getting their toilet paper, getting their water, running around, taking care of things, calling people. It's kind of exciting. It's kind of scary. And then people start helping each other. You see the heroes pop up, and there's agencies that, get food drives and things happen, and there's some good stuff happening. If the disaster ends quickly, there's a good feeling that you've survived, you made it. Now you have some stories. You can talk stories with your friends. I think about now the false missile attack notification we had some while ago. People are still talking about that. We survived that. Wasn't that a hell of a day? It was kind of amazing. Where were you? And we talked story about it. As a disaster continues and doesn't resolve quickly, people get disillusioned as it goes on and on. And this is when you start seeing people doing blaming and anger and starting lawsuits and saying somebody wasn't there enough, FEMA didn't show up soon enough, or the police weren't there, or my mother-in-law didn't show up at the right time, who was there for me? The sense that things are not right, things are not safe. And then over time, generally healthy people start reconstructing, getting better, get some help, take responsibility for what they can, and lives move on. Time passes and life moves on. So there's this process that goes through for disaster itself, and there's the psychological processes. So if you think about a disaster that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, people also have an early response, a middle response, and a late response until they're really on the other side of it. And if a disaster lasts, for example, a few hours, like a tornado, those processes are fairly short-lived, weeks, months. This has been going on for 6 months. We have no idea when we can start reconstitution phase. And a lot of people are now in disillusionment right now. So if you know where you are, that can help you deal with it. Because it doesn't take a death to have a grief response. Did you know you're grieving? You're grieving the things you've lost. Maybe you're having some great opportunities and learning how to do Zoom and IT and communicating differently with your family and friends, and maybe doing some art, and maybe some great things are going on, but you've also lost some things that you were comfortable with. And the first thing that happens when there's a death is there's, again, a systemic pattern of stages and responses people go through. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross defined that curve as denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. You're probably familiar with those. We've all kind of heard those before. Is that first you don't know what's going on, you're avoiding it, you're confused, you feel high, you feel low, you're afraid, and then you're frustrated and irritated because you can't control things, and then maybe you feel helpless and depressed, and then you struggle and bargain to try to find meaning, to figure it out, and eventually you come out of that tunnel with some acceptance. Healthy people go through that tunnel fairly reasonably and at a fairly good clip. People who are dysfunctional or broken or have shattered lives or are addicts or in pain for other reasons may struggle getting to acceptance. Their curve may take a lot longer to pass. The curve does generally pass. And how long it takes is how long it takes. There's no normal time speed for that to happen. And again, to remind you, this event is not going to go away soon. Things may recover, things will get better, but it's not going to go away for quite a while. That means the after effects, the aftermath, or what they call in an earthquake, the aftershocks, are going to continue for a while. And those are some of the disasters inside the disasters we'll talk about in a few minutes. But we have grief. People are dying all over the world, hundreds of thousands of people. People in our community, people in our neighborhood, people in our church. We've had so much grief this year anyway, and now the grief is just piling on. And so when we look at that curve of grief, kind of the regular curve of grief, it's ridiculous to think it's going to be smooth. My personal experience with grief is it's pretty messy. I'll feel like helping someone on one day, and the next day I'm just going to be mad, I'm going to be angry or fearful or have an outburst, or I might figure things out and teach and feel hopeful and see the goodness coming out of it and find a new experience and rise above it and be a survivor. And the next day I'll go, is this still going on? And then I'll go down again. So I will go through those numbers on a fairly regular basis, and most people do, whether they're aware of it or not. And the key is to be aware of it. And find out what you can do to help. What can help you? Well, the number one thing basically is communication. Any disaster I've ever been to or dealt with directly, the number one challenge was communication. You know, FEMA's trying to figure stuff out, and so they're talking to the police, and the police are talking to the transit authorities. The transit authorities are talking to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross is talking to their volunteers, and the volunteers are trying to talk to people, and all of that communication gets all twisted and torn and distorted because there's not one line of communication, and there shouldn't be. But knowing that communication is difficult, you can look at managing how you participate in the communication that you have any control and management over. Time management helps. Time management means in a disaster, your sense of timing is different. You're in an altered state, believe it or not. There have been times when I responded to a fire and people came out of the fire saying time felt like it stopped. I told a story about when my daughter passed away. Time stopped for me for quite a while, for days. And I noticed everybody else was, you know, doing things, and cars were being driven, and the pizza place across the street was open, and the dogs were barking. But I was in an altered state. And that can happen from time to time, where all of a sudden you feel like the days are going really slow or the days are going really fast. So managing your time is a kind of a different trick. Staying focused to avoid distractions, avoiding the rabbit hole, knowing yourself, using tools and resources, and extreme self-care. So let's go through these one at a time. Like I said, communication is a priority. So one of the things you can do as a team or with the family is you can create a phone tree. That means everybody kind of checks in with each other on a regular basis. Like now Tuesday, Joe calls Susie, and then Susie calls Frank, and then Frank calls Chemo, and then Chemo calls Allie. And the phone tree does a check-in of friendly allies. This keeps people in touch. It's a check-in. I have a group of people I call my check-in group. And you can listen and respond clearly. You don't have to hurry, even though time has changed. And communicate, being honest and kind and careful, because people are vulnerable. At some level, from 0 to 10, people are vulnerable. I have a group of people that I check in and check in with me, and we're empathy buddies. We check in. And during a disaster, you might need an empathy buddy, but you might also need an empathy medic if you're feeling really bad. So figure out what you need and how to communicate it from where you are, especially if you're in leadership. In leadership, you need to be visible and find creative new ways to connect with people. It's okay to feel awkward with that. If you're a card-carrying introvert like myself, I'd rather be home writing with hiding at home with a cup of tea and writing than out in the front of people. But as a leader, you have to step forward and say, we're here, we're doing okay. You know, what can I do to help? You have to prioritize your well-being. Put on your own oxygen mask first before you take care of anyone else. But also encourage other people to put on their oxygen mask also. Obviously, supporting IT issues is now a priority. I am so grateful for my IT people that help me do this. I am not IT, I'm a dinosaur pretty much. And coming up, I'm learning how to do this, and it's awesome. But if you have issues with IT, make sure they're taken care of, because that's a really important form of communication now. Set clear expectations. I have had so many calls from people for counseling and coaching lately that are exhausted and trying to do the normal stuff. And I say, did you know you're in the middle of a global pandemic? And they go, yeah, but what does that have to do with it? You know, well, things are different now. And it kind of dawns on them. They go, oh. I said, okay, so maybe you can lower your expectations just a little bit so you can catch your breath. Maybe you don't have to lower them all the way, but maybe just enough to catch your breath. It's important to establish a new sense of community during a disaster. We are all in this together. Unlike a tornado that will wipe a swath through a neighborhood, this is wiping its swath through all of our neighborhoods because we don't know it's hidden. We don't know where it is. It could show up any minute in your living room. So we're in this together. And so I think to be honest and kind and careful with people is the best we can do right now. I give a full training on time management, which is really kind of one of my favorites and it's fun. But today I'm just going to give you a micro time management training, just a quickie, kind of an overview of time management. So one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein. He said, "The only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen all at once." And I don't know about you, but right now it feels like a lot of things are happening at once. And at the same time, nothing is happening. It's a very strange time. But the short definition of time is, although it's a scientific thing with lots and lots of amazing quantum definitions, the short one is that it's that thing you never have enough of, and it seems to creep up with you when you least expect it. Time is weird, right? And time management is essentially, no matter how many techniques and theories and stuff there are available, basically time management is, are you getting your stuff done or are you not getting your stuff done? So there are traditional time management methods that you've probably heard of many times. One of them is the Stephen Covey method. It defines things, it basically categorizes things to do and priorities in 4 sections. Things that are important but not urgent, things that are important but are urgent, like the baby's crying, the house is on fire, someone calls. And the important things that aren't urgent, like exercise, vacation planning, they're important to me, but they're not a crisis. Then there are things that are not important but urgent, like someone calls you or interrupts you or the dog throws up. Nobody's dying, but you want to take care of it pretty fast. Or the not urgent and not important things. People who waste your time, busy work, trivia, social media at work, they're not urgent, they're not important, but they can take up your time. Another method, I like this one, is time mapping, where you take incremental planning for a time budget. I'm an art therapist, and so I like the artsiness of this. Some people can't track it, but if you can create a visual representation of how you budget your time, that can be just as much fun as a more linear expression. There's the traditional to-do list. What's on my list to do today? All right, everything. And so you make this long list and you try to check it off one thing at a time. Of course, the idea is, do you do the easiest thing first or the hardest thing first? That can throw people into the rabbit hole. Another typical method is called the 15 minutes and a cookie method. The Pomodoro method, basically you can set a timer and do something for 15 minutes and then take a break. And the joke was do 15 minutes, have a cookie, have a snack. But it's more of a metaphorical thing than a real cookie, especially during COVID-19. Because if you have a cookie after every 15 minutes, you're going to get more than the quarantine 15. You're going to get the quarantine or the COVID-20, and that's not where you want to go. So maybe a healthy dose of cookies is different. Take a break every 15, 20 minutes and stretch. Take a deep breath. Look out your window at a beautiful sight, long distance sight. Take a breath of fresh air. Walk to the end of the hallway or out to your lanai and back. Do something silly, whimsical. Draw some art, doodle, color. Play a quick game. I encourage you not to do a video game, but find someone, if there's someone at home, play a game of checkers or chess or whatever. Play some cards. Do something silly and that you wouldn't do during your workday usually. Try a few words of ventilation. I hate this. It's okay to ventilate your feelings, especially if you're home and no one's there. You're free to say whatever you want. A little bit of ventilation when you're holding energy is really good for you. Be thoughtful that, all your cameras and all of your tape recording things are turned off before you ventilate your true feelings. But ventilating can be a good practice. Or get an actual cookie, which could be a piece of fruit or a drink of water or a healthy treat. Take good care of yourself. So take a break, get up, move around, have a cookie, but make sure it's a healthy one. To understand and manage the multitude of distractions we have at work and at home is to understand how the universe works. The universe is sometimes a mess. It's chaotic and busy, and that's a good thing. That means life is happening around us. But a distraction can interrupt your flow. It changes things. It can lead to procrastination and waste. It leads to us resisting. If you had resistance to a task in the first place, and then you get distracted by something, it's more typical that you won't get back to it at a reasonable, productive time frame. Distractions can be internal or external obstacles. The voices inside your head that say, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, I'm not good at this is too hard, I'm too tired. All the inside voices that stop you from being productive can be very loud. They can be external obstacles too, like something as simple as, I can't sharpen my pencils at home. Now I have to go find a pencil sharpener. That means I have to drive to Office Max and buy it and use and keep the receipt. You know, there's external obstacles, the kids, the dog, the fire engines outside. And we try to control these things. And again, it's better not to try to control distractions. It's better just to do your best to manage them. Notice when they come, do your best, and let them pass, and not let them take over your real estate. There are people that will exploit time and exploit your work by talking too much or interrupting or demanding time that is very difficult, that becomes a distraction. In one of the books I've written, I talk about time terrorists who basically steal time. They manipulate time, they use your time, they waste your time, they procrastinate to control you, they interrupt, they resist. Now, look what the distractions are you getting. What can you manage? What can't you control? And how can you deal with it in a positive, affirming way and get back to what you want to do so that you feel better about yourself? And that's part of avoiding the rabbit hole, which I call the disaster inside the disaster. There's so many disasters inside a disaster. I think of things like, someone, my mom-in-law is not doing well right. She's sick and she's on the mainland and she can't see her grandkids. And that's really hard on her. That's a minor disaster in a disaster. But those type of things, or the business that just started, just invested gazillion dollars to launch their business the day before the lockdowns. That's a disaster inside the disaster. The disaster itself now is the pandemic, but the disasters inside the disaster are the rabbit holes that people fall into in despair and grief. Excuse me. So this is a time to take stock. Take a time to really pay attention to yourself, to know what are your needs? How can you take care of yourself? Use this time to get support. The support you may never have had or wanted before. Some people go through a disaster saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and they are. But sometimes there are people who were kind of thinking, gosh, I'd really like a little help in my marriage before the disaster, and now it's worse. So this is a time to get the help. Get it now before there's another disaster inside your disaster. It's a perfect time and excuse to find new ways of being in the world. What may have been easy before may be harder now. And this may be a time for you to say, okay, it actually needs help. So in that, what you're doing is you're creating not only a self-care practice for yourself, which I'm sure you can imagine is a great thing to do, good self-care, but you're creating an extreme self-care package for yourself, a practice that can sustain you and give you resilience when things are hard. Because this is a time to boost your resilience, not stretch it so thin that you have lost your resilience and fall into the rabbit hole. So self-care is physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental. And this isn't a self-care training for you, but when I do that training, we talk about each one of these spaces and how to fill them up so that you're balanced. If any one of these pieces of the pie is missing energy, missing support, the whole system can become unbalanced. So what you want to do is you want to make sure there's something sustainable in each one of those pieces of pie to take care of yourself, and do that on a daily basis, not just when you're falling down the rabbit hole. It's kind of like a bungee cord to keep you out of the rabbit hole. Because this is a unique time. Taking good self-care is a unique opportunity. You can be one of the heroes of this disaster by being good and healthy and strong and survive your vulnerability and be honest about it, be true about how hard it is. Or you can be, unfortunately, one of the looters. You know, we see pictures on the news of people who take opportunity of difficult times of floods and fires, breaking windows and stealing things. But there's lots of different kinds of looters. There aren't just the looters that go into buildings and steal stereos. There's looters that will steal your time and steal your hope and steal your sense of connectedness, who will make you more afraid with weird stories and doom and gloom and threats of death and craziness. You know, these people are looters also. They'll loot your inner hero that wants to do good and help and support yourself and each other's. I have lots of stories of people in disasters who, before the disaster, were not strong people. And they suited up and showed up, and they are amazing. And I've also seen people who were strong and powerful disappear and become, unfortunately, looters who exploited a situation that they could have been heroes for. You have no control over the disaster, but you do have a way to manage whether you're a hero or a looter, and that's on you. So manage the crisis the best you can. Recognize your range of emotions. They're normal, ups and downs. If you don't have a lot of emotions, that's great, unless you're numb and in denial. You know, if you're not a little nervous or a little afraid or a little anxious about what's going on, you probably should give me a call, because this is a global pandemic. And if you're not feeling something about it, I'm wondering if either you're heavily medicated or not paying attention or have your head in a hole like an ostrich, because these are difficult times. Doesn't mean you have to be running around screaming and freaking all the time, but it does mean you should be noticing and feeling. Are you empathetic? Are you able to feel for other people? Who are you? What are you doing? Share information and resources. Promote creative ways to work and adapt to work. Help people understand these big changes. Help them see the big picture. Promote your own resiliency and the resiliency of others. And resiliency is not, we're fine, we're happy, everything's good. No, resiliency is suiting up and showing up in the reality of what's going on with your self-care tools and standing up one more time after you fall. Resiliency is what you have to deal with during a crisis. If you don't feel like you have resiliency right now, give us a call at your EAP, because we teach resiliency skills. Resiliency is something you can learn. It's not some magical thing that other people have. It's a learned skill. Learn it. Check in with each other. Don't go invisible. Get the facts and stay informed. I encourage you to limit news and social media and conspiracy theories. I, for one, now allow myself about 5 minutes of news a day. I'm off social media because it's crazy and it was making me mental. And I don't need that kind of toxic information coming at me, because there's too much coming. It's like a flood of toxins. I don't need that. I need to stay healthy and well. So I check in to make sure what's going on, check in with my people, stay informed, check the news. I find it's easier to read the paper than watch the television. I can see what's going on, but it's not like in my face with electric forces zapping me. So stay informed, get the facts, but limit it, be smart. Focus on what's positive. That doesn't mean be happy, cheery. It just means remember there's good stuff too. Practice mindfulness, stay in the now. I think doing something that masters you, lifts you. I really love doing laundry now because I can control that laundry. I can pick up that laundry, I can put it in the washer, I can put the thing in and start it and dry it and fold it. I have total control of the laundry. It's awesome. Or take a walk, check on a friend. We're watching a lot more TV now because we're not going out, but we're being really selective about what we watch. Um, Read a book, listen to good music, get some acupuncture, check in with your doctor. Do what's healthy that you have some control over now. Think about what you might say to a friend in your circumstance and then say it to yourself. Talk to your inner voices, basically. Reassure them that you're there for them. Tell your inner voices that you got this. They might not believe you, but after a while, they'll believe you. Practice gratitude. If a disaster doesn't teach you to be grateful, what's wrong with you? We look around and we see people in hell all over the planet. And if we're not in hell and we're not suffering, then we have plenty to be grateful for. Maybe you've lost a lot of things, or people around you have lost things. And sometimes what we're grateful for has to seem really small. For example, and this is actually a legitimate example I learned in graduate school. When all else fails, be grateful that you have a pencil. You can sharpen a pencil and draw or write a note on a piece of paper. Be grateful you have a piece of paper. Sometimes it has to get very small. Gratitude doesn't have to be big. I'm grateful for the world, the opportunity of COVID-19. No, it doesn't have to be that big fake thing. It can just be, oh my gosh, I live in a world where I can still have glasses and see. I have a chair. I have a roof over my head. And if I don't have a roof over my head, there are people trying to help me get that. Find a way to be grateful. Even if it's small, you can slosh around in it. I'm wallowing in gratitude. I hope you're at least splashing around in it. We have to find new ways to deal with these new times. It's on you to do the best you can to manage you. And again, you can't control anybody else's behavior, but you can manage your own. And one of the ways to do that is expand your resources. What tools do you have? What tools can you use? What more do you need? If you're building, a toy, maybe all you need is a hammer and a nail. But to build a building, you need a lot of toys. Pandemic is like a building. You have to use a lot of toys to build your resilience and your self-care. It's not just a simple thing. It's like, an aspirin won't take care of an appendectomy. You need surgery. On the other hand, you don't need surgery, if you stub your toe. Find your resources that work for you, the ones that match, and apply them to the situation. And sometimes it's not enough. So who should you call for backup? Who's your empathy buddy? Who's your empathy medic? What do you call, what's your survival 911? Well, one of them should be your EAP. Your company has provided you with employee assistance program. Out of their generosity, they have provided you with a program that you can reach out to for free and confidential anytime to talk about something big or something small. You can call and just talk story if you want. You can talk about your dog. You can talk about your family. You can talk about work. You can talk about anything. Or if you have a difficult problem, basically it's confidential, easy to access resource for employees and families outside the workplace. It's free. And now with COVID-19, we can do it on phone, on video. We're doing conferencing all over the state, and keeping people together, keeping people working, letting people know they're not alone. Sometimes all it takes is just to talk to another person outside family and outside work, just to get another perspective, or to complain or ventilate, like I said earlier. It's a safe place for you to do that, because we're not going to report to your boss that you called. Employees and the members of your immediate family living with you are covered. Some people use it for marriage problems or emotional behaviors or alcohol or drugs or work. Some people, like I said, just call because they want to talk to somebody else. They want to talk to a coach or a counselor and get some ideas and just maybe run something past them. Again, it's confidential, local. You have 3 sessions per year. Other organizations have 6 sessions per year. You have to check your contract to see what it is. But the nice thing is all of our counselors are master's level and above, and you don't have to check with your HR. You don't have to ask anybody's permission. You probably have a brochure or have information, or you can go to our website or give us a call at our office to find out what kind of coverage you have. Because we have 75 plus providers across the state to take care of you. We also include legal consultation, which means you have a 30-minute consultation, face-to-face or telephonic locally, with a lawyer who can help you figure out what you need to do if you have a legal question, and they will help you get started. If you need more help from them, it's a 25% rate reduction, but they can get you started. If it's not work-related, we won't help you sue your company. But there are a lot of things that we need legal consultations with, is, trusts and divorces and business ideas. You call us and we'll set you up with a legal consultation for free. Again, always confidential. Same thing with financial consultation. Maybe you want to talk to a financial expert about taxes or debt or budgeting. Give us a call and we'll set you up with an expert to talk about your financial needs. We also provide O'Kelly caregiving consultation. If you have an elder or a sick person at your home or you're dealing with it, O'Kelly is a healthcare navigator that can help you understand what you need to do from time to time, or who to call, or where to get that prescription. How do I get crutches? And now mom needs a walker and I don't have time to do that because I got to go to work. They will help take over navigating the process of getting your loved one in good shape through the medical systems. Working through medical systems can be very time consuming and very difficult, and O'Kelly will help you navigate that. We also have a great website. There are all sorts of articles on all sorts of topics. And right now, of course, we have a lot on COVID that's available for you. Working with COMAT, training employees, layoffs, fear, anxiety. What do you do when you come back to work? We have a variety in our COVID section on our website. Please check it out. Articles can be downloaded and given to your team. It's a great resource, and again, it's free. You can also sign up for 52 weeks of well-being and get a weekly newsletter right in your inbox with some tips for resiliency and some art and some fun ideas. Again, free, sign up for it. It's a resource that's available for you. Everything you share with us is held in strict confidence. Information is never released without your written consent, unless, of course, like usual, if you're going to harm yourself or others, child abuse or elder abuse. Essentially, all you need to do is call or go online. Our number is 808-597-8222. And there are live counselors every day, 24/7, 365. You can talk to a live person and get the support you need. A lot of people at the end of a session say, well, I'm fine, I don't need anything. And I go, that's great. I'm happy. That's fine. However, you might be having lunch with somebody and they're talking story to you about something going on with their life or their family member, and you might not have time or a good idea to help. You might not want to say something like, you should leave that guy, or, here's what my mom did. What you might want to say is, don't forget, we all have this EAP benefit. Why don't you give them a call and ask them? Maybe they have some ideas for you. And that's a way you can be a hero to yourself as a helper and that other person who may need more help than you can give them. So that ends my training for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you got a few questions answered, or maybe you have new questions that it brought up. Again, this was an overview of one of our trainings, and I hope that if you do have questions, you can call 597-8222, talk to our office manager and say, I have some questions about a training I took. Can I talk to Dr. Valley or one of the counselors? And we'll be sure to talk with you and help you out with that. Be safe, be sane, be careful, and I expect you all to be one of the heroes. Thank you so much for your time.